to Benin immediately for a new deployment. He reported and I briefed him on the war situation and told him that I was sending him to the Irua front. Fortunately, Captain Adeleke, who had been with us since the coup, had just been sent to us from Enugu headquarters. I sent for him at once and made him the second in command to Chukwuka. The two of them made a good pair and were off in no time. It was only then that sanity attended our fortunes at the northern front. The enemy still pushed us continuously, but the rate of push went drastically down. Every morning, they would encounter a new defensive location. Every evening, they beat back our counterattack. For once, they ceased to make it a jolly ride towards Benin. For once, formerly, we were running. Now, we were really fighting. Before the enemy entered Irua, I had ordered the 11th Battalion Company at Agenabode to move to Irua and build a powerful defensive position on Irua-Agbo Road, so as to prevent the enemy from flanking to our rear. This precaution worked very well. The enemy carefully avoided the Agbo Road defenses and turned rather towards Benin. This was a longer approach to our Benin-Agbo-Onitsha axis, and we had a longer time to face them. It was fortunate at this time that one of the famous Biafran Red Devils, ancient pre-World War II armored vehicles, was sent to us. Also, Ipiajuna brought us a Molotov cocktail, an explosive and destructive bomb. Both were sent to the Irua front, and they helped to slow down the advance of the enemy. It was at this time that Lieutenant Colonel Akaga surfaced again. He claimed to have been lost in the bush for 12 days, until at last he found his way back to Benin. I congratulated him on his safe return. However, he looked hale and fresh, not like someone who had been sleeping on treetops without a decent food for 12 days. I took him to the commander, who also congratulated him. He claimed to be tired and was given a fortnight off. He left for Biafra. Before the reappearance of Lieutenant Colonel Akaga, rumors had circulated that he was killed in a fake ambush laid by Brigadier Banjo. Spreading rumors was the stock in trade of people who were keen to malign their opponents. It was a dangerous weapon and was frequently used in Biafra. However, it was not unfortunate and rather disturbing. Sorry, it was most unfortunate and rather disturbing that this particular rumor was still repeated by Madiebo in his book, earlier referred to in this book, published 10 years after the end of the Civil War. Madiebo wrote, Colonel Akaga lost his command Land Rover and all his escorts in the ambush, but managed to escape and make his way to Onitsha, a distance of 100 miles on foot. The ambush was organized and executed by our own forces, acting under somebody's instructions. What a colossal lie. Surely, Madiebo had had sufficient time to have found out the truth. While the battle raged, our northern front and we were putting in all we had. It became quite obvious that our total defeat in the area was only a matter of days, not weeks. Militarily, we had no legs to stand upon. In the first place, we did not recruit soldiers in the Midwest. If we did, we would have diverted the full resources of the states, men, money, and material into the war effort. Was this really feasible in the circumstances? Certainly not. Biafran entry into the Midwest was seen by the people, especially the non-Igbos of the states, as an act of foreign aggression. Although Banjo proclaimed his own independence of Biafra and his aim of liberating the whole of Nigeria from the hands of the northern feudalists, he was yet to prove it. He had to move further west, capture Ibadan and Lagos, and call for a national fight against feudalism. That is, he had to reignite the revolution before he could make himself credible. To be sure, that was his original purpose. But that purpose was compromised and almost totally destroyed the moment we ceased to push westwards. Even if we had captured the West, had we managed to push our way forward, no matter how slowly, we could have got the whole of the South involved. The forces would have been divided, and our cause might have been vindicated. The cost of the war would then have gone either way, much depending on our own ability to convince the people to fight on our side. There was no doubt that there were forces in the West, as well as in Lagos, who would have taken to our side. As long as the Western and Lagos moves were not fulfilled, the Midwest move remained stillborn. The longer it lasted, the worse. The people did not feel that they were part of the operation. They gradually got more hostile. As soon as the federal troops had started to push down in earnest, they were welcomed as true liberators. It would have been a totally different story if it was Eastern Nigeria and not Biafra that entered the Midwest to continue the political struggle of old. They would not have been regarded as foreigners. The change of name certainly alienated the Midwest people from the Biafrans. Consequent upon this point, and consequent upon Gowon's Decree 14, which made the 12-state structure a reality, the idea of declaring the Midwest an independent republic of Benin was an anathema to the people because it was not their own making, and they were not prepared for it. Their former governor, Ejo, had won their hearts and convinced them of their neutrality in the conflict. It was therefore not easy for a foreign-led and foreign-backed regime to readily change their minds. The third sore point was the behavior of the Biafran troops in the Midwest. This led to a lot to be desired. They behaved like an army of occupation and not of liberation by molesting the people. These problems could have been solved if only the units had had their complement of officers or something near to it. Not in this reverse case where a whole battalion had only 1 or 2 seasoned officers. When the Oba of Benin, Akenzua II, and his chiefs summoned me to one of their meetings, they did not discuss how the liberation of the Midwest could be made a reality. They simply wanted the menace of the Biafran troops removed. Although Banjo had taken the precaution of asking the troops to remove their Biafran army badge from their uniforms, what difference did that really make as to their nationality and behavior? Now, if we had no military leg to stand upon, did we have the political? This problem really agitated the commander of the Liberation Army. On this question of Nigeria unity, I agree with you, Gowon, said Banjo. Unfortunately, Ojukwu knew it too, and that was why he did not really want or allow Banjo to remain in Benin for long. He always called Banjo back within 24 to 48 hours of his arrival in Benin. So how difficult is that? Ojukwu just wanted Biafra, right? And they were not interested in taking over Nigeria. So this conflict of interest, the conflict of supposed leaders of liberation, that wasn't really, Ojukwu wasn't interested in taking over Nigeria. But it also had his eyes in the spoil of those who were interested. So put it this way, Ojukwu was not interested in fighting the rest of Nigeria. But this liberation army led by Banjo, funded by Ojukwu, right? They are hell-bent on taking over Nigeria and saving Nigeria from Gowon. Ojukwu objected at first, but the moment they said or agreed that if we succeed, we'll give you the honor to appoint the governor. We'll give you the honor of appointing this or that. So he was interested in like, okay, yeah, if you succeed, fine. But if you don't, just know that I am only interested in Biafra, kind of. So this conflict of interest actually ended up working in the interest of, in favor of Gowon. Because Ojukwu at the time as well, despite having this arrangement with these guys, and he knows their ambition, he could have cut them up and said, listen, I'm not interested, cut it off. But he didn't. He kept supporting them and the rest. Then he kept sending spies after them to sort of understand their mindset, what they have in mind. So this one, like I said, this is the some complexity of history that if you begin to review it, you begin to ask questions about the mind of these men that time. Because the way I understand this is this: so Ademoyega and this guy, Ademoyega, Banjo, the two of them did not believe in Biafra, and Ojukwu knew that they did not believe in Biafra. These two guys believed that they could fight Gowon, okay, by taking over Ibadan and Lagos and seeking the support of the South. If they can win the support of the Southerners and make it their war, they can then advance forward and take over the North and dislodge Gowon. Ojukwu knew about their ambition too. But he allowed it. He didn't cut them off like, no, I'm not interested. No, cut it off. He didn't. Then one of them got punished for disrespecting or disobeying Ojukwu's order. The people that are indeed not like, we're not going to be part of that, you knew. So when you begin to look into the minds of all these men, as part of the history you are reading, then you realize that they are actually men after all. They are just mortals. They are men like me and you. The circumstances actually, or let me say, destiny and circumstances pushed before them a great deal of responsibility. Like you have to be responsible for the lives of millions of people and all of that. And in the process, you have to also be careful of those who want to get rid of you and then come for those people. Like that. So they were all men after all. Men. Let's continue. So they said that Banjo tried to contact Gowon. Which means some of them are even still trying to reach out to Gowon. They're still reaching out to some of those people that they are fighting war. Remember, this is already war already going on. Oh. This is not like them negotiating for anything. There is already war. People are already dying on both sides, from all fronts. Here you get now. So in this phase of war was when they were making all these decisions. Do this, do that. No, don't do it. Don't do it now. Do it next time and all of that stuff. But let's continue. If Ojukwu knew that Banjo wanted Nigeria united, that is to say, Not merely that the remainder of Nigeria should stay as one, but that the name Biafra should disappear from the East. Did Gowon also know it? If the Liberation Army could not liberate Nigeria from Gowon's feudal masters, could it liberate the East from Ojukwu secessionist masters? These were the questions that Banjo strove to answer in the few days and hours that he spent at the headquarters in Benin, and what answers did he find for them? Since Ojukwu will not approve the advancement and idea of Banjo, which is now costing them the war, they decided that maybe they should even plan to take over and get rid of Ojukwu himself. His idea is dangerous. Let's continue reading. Banjo tried to contact Gowon through official sources, but he did not tell me whether or not he succeeded in doing so, and whether or not he reached any agreement with him. I, for one, was deeply involved in the battle operations, and I was almost daily at the front to be sure that we did not yield an inch to the enemy unnecessarily. Therefore, I could not discuss in detail with Banjo before he finally left Benin. A few days before then, Ifeajuna visited me in Benin and discussed the political solution as a possible alternative to the military, in view of Biafra's very heavy and continued loss of men, material, and credibility. Enugu, he said, was badly threatened and could fall any minute from then. It could be tragic to wait for that to happen. Besides, if the federal side won militarily, they will perpetrate the worst possible genocide on Easterners. Look at that they had, look at all that they had so far done in the captured areas. Real and unwarranted massacre, looting, arson, rape, and worse things. He emphasized to me that Ojukwu was totally intransigent and that a political solution, if any, might have to be put into effect without his consent. Remember that Ojukwu swore that they will fight to the last man. This political solution move, were being made behind him to start with. Okay? So I told my friend that I had always believed in revolution, provided it was going to be successful. Otherwise, it would be pointless starting it. Where exactly were his chances of success in this proposed solution? He explained to me that it was simple and that there were many others who believed that they would easily achieve the aim. I knew too little about Enugu and his arrangements to argue with him. But knowing him the way I did, I had my reservations. He soon left for Enugu. That was about September 16, 1967. By September 17, I was again at the war front, and very unfortunately, I learned that Captain Adeleke, our staff fighter at the front, had been badly wounded and taken to the General Hospital in Agbo. Our defensive work was terribly weakened from that day. Not that Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuka could not perform, but he needed the courage and strength of someone like Adeleke to back him up. By that time, the enemy was less than 6 miles from Ikpoba Junction, on the outskirts of Benin. If our defenses were truly weakened, which indeed they were, the enemy would make that distance in less than a day. If, on the other hand, we could still keep them in check, as we had been doing of late, we should have 4 clear days to keep them out of Benin. After that, we would, of necessity, move the headquarters to Agbo. Should the enemy occupy the Ikpoba Junction before we move the headquarters, we would be cut off from the Benin-Agbo-Onitsha axis, although we would still get out through a long detour via Sapele. Much time would be lost, and the enemy might even seize the initiative and take Agbo before we could reach it. Therefore, it seemed tactically wise and necessary to move the headquarters out of Benin at least 24 hours before the enemy took the Ikoba junction. By the early hours of the 18th, I was again at the war front to give an essential backing to Chukwuka. We still contained the enemy to beyond 4 miles of Ikoba junction. On my getting to the headquarters, however, there was a message from a reliable federal source through the police network that federal seaborne troops would land in Warri any moment from dawn on September 18. If that was already happening or would almost immediately happen, our ground in Benin would be completely untenable. For one thing, our force in that part was not strong enough to resist the successful landing of the federal troops. The 18th Battalion stationed in that port was a ragged, ill-equipped, and ill-controlled unit. Reports of their lawlessness in town had been scandalous. The new commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Unsudo, was a young and inexperienced commander. I signaled him at once to hold the port against the federal invaders, but I knew what to expect. I went straight to discuss the situation with the commander, who told me that he seemed to have won his battle against those forces that had always denigrated him in Enugu, for he was now invited to take up the appointment of Chief of Defense Staff. This was a newly created post to command and control all the Biafran forces on the various fronts to bolster up the Biafra war efforts. He made a quick appreciation of the Midwest situation. He understood quite clearly that Benin will soon be locked in, both from the north and from the south. As such, he ordered me to move the headquarters to Agbo in the evening of the same day. As soon as the order was given, I sent signal messages to the 12th and the 18th battalions that the headquarters was moving to Agbo. Banjo himself had got in touch with the military administrator, Major Okonkwo, who also was well equipped of the tactical situation. Brigadier Banjo left Benin for Enugu early in the afternoon on the 18th and promised to be back to Agbo in another day or two. Later that evening, I moved the headquarters to Agbo, but I did not give up my continued defense of the city. It was only the tactical headquarters that I had moved away so that we would not suddenly be locked in and made easy prey to a ruthless and unscrupulous enemy. The dawn of the 19th saw me again at the battlefront. I deployed the mortar group, zeroing them, though without any sight-setting equipment or instruments, on the enemy position. When they commenced shelling the enemy, I went forward to our front line. The enemy soon started their counter-bombardment, using both artillery and mortars. Before long, they had silenced our mortars. By 6 in the morning, they had started moving, and within 2 hours, at that juncture, I went off at a tangent in order to command our mortars to take a fresh position. When I got to the mortar position, I found that they had left the place. I then tried to find my way further in the area to see if I could trace them. I was walking along a bush path, and had only my batsman, personal servant, with me. Suddenly, I looked up, and a little forward in front of me, along the same bush path, a rope-like stem of a creeping plant was hanging from the branch of a tree. It was hanging right above the bush path, and it moved forward and backward, twisting at the same time, as if it had only just been disturbed. I stopped and became apprehensive. I ordered my Batman to go a little forward to observe whether or not there were people ahead of us. As he moved forward and was under the hanging stem, a burst of machine gun was opened on him from right flank. He ran further forward and disappeared from my sight. It was too dangerous for me to move forward. So I turned right around to return to the area that I was coming from. After moving 5 steps, another machine gun fire opened up in front of me from the same flank. Obviously, I was between 2 enemy machine guns, and they were observing me without me seeing them. They could not be our own troops, since we did not even have 2 machine guns in our combat formation. I turned sharply right in the only direction opposite to the positions of the machine guns. It was a bush, but I entered into it and moved so fast that one would imagine that I was on another bush path. The 2 machine guns opened on me, but I kept my own direction until I got out of their ranges. After that, I found my way to Agbo Road and returned to the headquarters. My Batman did not rejoin me, and I have not heard anything of him ever since. Later that day, I telephoned Banjo, and he was glad that I came out alive from the ambush. He told me that Enugu was calm and that he would be back the next day in Agbo. From the way he spoke, I knew that he had some news for me, which he would not disclose on the phone. So I was expecting to see him the next day. One sec. I've been too far away from that screen, by the way. So let us continue. To my utter surprise, the next day, September 20, brought me a totally different kind of news. I received a military signal from the headquarters in Enugu, appointing me as the commander of the Biafran troops in the Midwest and requesting me to confirm my acceptance of the offer. That was really shocking. It will bring me directly under the command of His Excellency, Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu, the head of state of Biafra, with an exclamation mark like, certainly not. I signaled back, declining the offer, and I went further to ask, what has happened to Brigadier Banjo and the Liberation Army? Little did I realize that I was stepping on a tail of a wide boar. Honestly, I was fully occupied with the activities of the battlefront, and I received no information whatsoever on what was happening in Enugu. At dawn on the 21st, I still went to the battlefront. At that time, the enemy was on his last leg to take Ekpoba Junction, and I knew that they would soon enter Benin. I returned to my headquarters in Agbo just after midday. Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuka was with me, and at about 14 hours, 2 p.m., we both settled down to a good meal. We had not gone far with the meal when all of a sudden, Major Achuzia and another officer, both in uniform, walked straight to my dining table and both pointed their guns at me and said, "You are now under arrest. Hands up, or we shall fire." Gosh, I was extremely infuriated. I was boiling with anger. So I shouted at them, "Okay, you wait till I have my own gun." I got up immediately from my dining chair, left both of them standing there, dashed into my bedroom, took my submachine guns, cocked it, and then said, "Right, if you attempt to shoot me now, I will finish both of you." They did not move. Thereupon Shukuka intervened, saying that there was no need for a fight. Then Major Akuzia, who was notorious for recklessly killing the troops on